Brent Lindeque, Mr. Good Things guy, and my old friend. How are you?
So amazing. I don't know, 2024 is a good year, and it's incredible to be sitting down with you and chatting. We don't get enough time together to spend together, and what a bloody honor.
It is never lost on me how valuable this time is, because you're right, we're both busy running around doing things, and we go way back, but it's not where my head is at today. I've been watching this journey of yours, as most people do, from social media. I love watching people that are doing great things skyrocket. I feel like that's what's happening to you. I want to spend a moment understanding the Good Things guy state of play.
Yeah.
And then I want to get into some details, because I think you sit in a very interesting position with understanding the psyche of news, good and bad, on the broader public. But tell me, 2024, the last year, how are things going for Good Things guy?
It's been really crazy, because I used to be this one-man show that had a really cool idea. It was a cool idea. It is still a cool idea to share good news with South Africa and the world. And that's become a business. It's a real business. I've got staff that work for me. I've got an assistant, which is unreal. She's actually my boss. She runs my life. She tells me where to go, when to be there, which is crazy. But I've got this incredible team that are now able to take this idea that I had and move it forward in their own way. It's grown, the business has grown, the stories that we tell have grown, so the amount of sort of stories that we're putting out there is ridiculous. And then obviously all those other sides of this universe have just grown as well. The radio work, the TV work, the keynotes, which I'm sure we're going to get into, because at one stage, the first keynote I ever did was with suits and sneakers. And I don't know, 8 years later, my whole life has changed. I'm doing 3 or 4 a week.
I think it shows you how the universe will reward people for going after something that they believe is right. And I was explaining to my girlfriend off air the kind of genesis of Good Things guy, and when we were all doing this neck nomination thing. And what people don't fully realize is, at the time, everyone's posting these videos of themselves downing a drink and nominating someone else. And it's not, I don't want to overplay it either, but it's quite a big thing to go, you guys, why are we using this time and attention and this space to do this? And why don't we do this instead? When you look back later, it's easy to go, of course that made sense. In the moment, to buck that trend and not look lame or like a party pooper. But then that whole world for you spiraled. And the quick backstory is that we had been friends, but I said to you, I think the story is phenomenal. Would you come to speak at the first ever Suits and Sneakers? You did. But why it's not luck, why it's not a one-off, is watching this growth on all ends. You effectively have the biggest, in my mind, good news media company probably in the world. Is there someone bigger?
There are other
dedicated to good news?
Yes, there are. There's other good news sites around the world that do really good things as well.
Amazing.
But I feel that perhaps, and this might be overreaching, and I might be speaking out of my skill set or my knowledge zone, but I kind of feel like South Africa needs it more. I kind of feel like our country, where we are, yes, it's great to have a good news site in insert country here, but South Africa needs it, and they needed it badly when I started it.
Yes.
Unbeknownst to me, 10 years ago, when I started this journey and the neck nominations happened, and I got into Cliff Central and then Suits and Sneakers and started the platform, there was already good news sites and good newspapers in South Africa. But I don't know what the reasoning is there. They hadn't become as mainstream as what this little idea that I had eventually did. And I thank God every day, because I feel like it's a gift that was given to me.
I do kind of feel like it was almost meant for you in a way, and that doesn't take away from any of the hard work, because God knows what people don't see behind the scenes. But there's this like intersection of skills, personality, talent, and everything in between that coincided for you. If you take your keynotes as an example, I've watched a number of your keynotes over the years, beyond the first. That's a skill set all on its own that you have developed over time. I think that people are pleasantly surprised when they see you speak, because some might think, oh, here's this guy who's really good at creating good news, so he's just going to like nod off the story. But it turns out that the actual keynotes are brilliant.
Stop it.
I really, and I don't say this often, you know what it's like, Brenty, I'm sure. a lot of people come to me because I speak professionally, and they'll say, I'm thinking about doing public speaking. And in my head, I'm like, please don't. It's gonna be terrible, and this is not gonna end well.
Yeah.
So I don't really try punt people to do this, because I don't think most people can, to be honest. But I think it's just naturally good for it, and the way it ties in. So it's been great for you, but you've put in a lot of hard work. And I want to kind of transition immediately, because so many people know your story.
Yeah.
The question that I wanted to start with in my mind is around what you see, the psyche of bad news that plays out, especially in South Africa. The way I see it is that if it bleeds, it leads. Bad news tends to literally hijack our amygdala, and we're almost addicted to the bad news cycle. And you've managed to flip that somehow. I'd love to hear how it's been and how it's going now with, do you feel that you've managed to definitely balance out the good news versus bad news part? And do you think that people are now more looking for good news where previously they just looked for the bad?
So there's a couple of things here, because it's a complex thing, right? So the first thing is that psychological thing that you're speaking about is called the spotlight effect. When you wake up in the morning and you look at a news headline, or Eskom Push is telling you that we're going into load shedding stage, 11, whatever it is. When you see that and it upsets you, the spotlight effect makes you concentrate on that headline that much more. And then what your brain does is it starts to block out everything in the peripheral. So you don't even see the other headlines, you don't see the good news, you don't see the good news story that your, Auntie Mariki put on the WhatsApp group that happened in the family. You don't see that, because this is all you can concentrate on. That thing then starts to consume you. It starts to become your biggest worry. So you're going, load shedding, it's affecting everything, my job, my life, we got to move. It starts to play on your mind, and you start to then make decisions in that state of mind. So that's the first sort of problem that we have. I'm going somewhere with this.
I love this.
When we are, as a nation or even as an individual, when you are in this state of mind, it starts to impact your sentiment towards the country. And when your sentiment changes, you start to lose sight and you start to not believe in good news. You know, if you are on a Facebook page, and you on that Facebook page all the time, and you become a biggest fan, top fan, you get that badge. When the sentiment is bad, and when someone is in that frame of mind, our top fans on Good Things Guy will call us out to be liars. They will tell us, there's no way that story is true. That security guard picked up that pensioner's envelope of money and gave it back. No ways is that true. And we're going, it's true because it's real, because we interviewed them and the story's real. And if you read this story tomorrow in a different frame of mind, you'll believe it. So that's sort of like a breakdown of the sentiment of the country, right? And where we are. I see this from my side in the back end of the website. So we can physically see who's on the website and reading stories down to the second. It's addictive and a little bit obsessive when people wake up in the morning and they switch on their phone to doom scroll through, Instagram or Twitter. I'm on the back end of my site because I want to know who's reading my stuff at 5:30 in the morning. Very interested by that. So when the news is bad, our readership goes down. People don't come to our site. It's the reality. But it takes one small thing in someone's day to turn that all around. So you are able to remove yourself out of the spotlight effect and then start to look at good news again. News agencies have started to realize this. So in 2019, that's how many years ago? 5 years ago? 2019. Good Things Guy was 5 years old. 5 years old. I had one staff member. We were sort of every day trying to find, the number in my head for some reason was 6 stories per person. So it was me and another journo, and we were writing 12 stories a day, every day, 7 days a week. That was how we sort of pushed through. And in 2019, a funny thing started happening in mainstream media news in South Africa. They started using Good Things Guy as a source for their stories. So we apply to a thing called Newsclip, where we get notified whenever Good Things Guy is mentioned anywhere in the news in South Africa, whether it's print, radio, or TV broadcast. And our emails started pinging with different news sites around the country that were using our stories and sourcing it back to Good Things Guy. At first it was a few, so one every couple of days, and that started ramping up. Until, as you know, News 24 launched their Feel Good section in 2019. I write for them. We're not competitors. I believe there's enough sun for everybody, and I believe that South Africans require good news. They require that balance. So your question was, where do we find ourselves? Are people investing more time in good news? Mainstream media sees it. They're pushing towards it. As far as I understand, most of the news sites and newspapers are featuring good news now. And when it comes to are South Africans going out there looking for good news, I see it on the back end. I see it every single morning that people aren't even coming to our site via a social media page anymore, via a seeded article.
Yes, it's direct.
They're physically logging on at 5:30 in the morning. People are focusing and changing the way that they want to see the world when they wake up in the morning. And I know from what I do and the space that I'm in, how that can completely change your perspective of the world and I guess not even your sentiment, but your happiness level when you start to look at things in a different light. So yes, I believe that people are investing more time, energy, and effort into focusing on that good news.
I think that's one of your greatest contributions. I think there are many, but for whatever reason, you managed to get that inertia moving that then other people tapped into you. It's almost like a network effect for good news.
Absolutely.
And I've seen it in my own life that I can take stock of where my general mentality is by how much I'm moaning about little things throughout the day. And when I catch myself going, this country's going to the dogs, or this is, just the little inner voice in your head. And I'm like, it's because you've literally been focused on these things. And it's clear to me that what you look for is what you will find. But you have to be aware of how you ebb and flow through that. And I think social media obviously has played one of the greatest roles here because, if I read an article of yours and I really enjoy it, I can push it along. And you've gained this notoriety as Good Things Guy, and for good reason. But what I find so interesting is the ability or the journey to changing that. Because now it's easy to look back and go, oh, that's how it happened. Look at 2019, look at 2024. But when you look back and you think about the state of play, I watched News 24 and the like starting to feature those. I was like, they're not doing this for fun.
They're doing it because the country, needed it. As human beings, we require that balance. Imagine if we just fed our minds with one narrative of what this country is.
Yeah.
Every decision we would make would be in that fearful stage.
Yes.
So you require that balance to have a good perspective of the country. But then also I think the other news sites are going, hold on, this Oaks news site is growing at a rapid rate and he only does good news. Unheard of. Like that it shouldn't work. But for some reason, right time, right place, right light, it did.
So you've got an interesting point of view from a data perspective, your website and so forth. So if I were to say to you, Brenty, what do you think the state of play in South Africa is right now? We are a few months away from the general election, so I feel there's a little bit of tension for obvious reasons. We know that there are certain things that aren't going well in the country because we measure them. The economy isn't necessarily in great shape. It's not growing at the rate that we need to. Unemployment is happening at a significant rate. It's far greater than what's reported. But we know that, potholes, etc. But because that's what's largely fed to the masses, you could get consumed in that. Yeah. So if we take that as one side, how do you balance that out with what's good that's happening in South Africa, and what do you think the general state of play is from Brent's perspective of South Africa?
From my perspective, I think that there is tension. I think that South Africa, this is going to be a very interesting year when it comes to the elections. There's some journalists and colleagues in the field who have a good understanding. I don't play political, so I don't have that understanding of where we are and how this is going to work out. But they seem to have the numbers in their heads as to what they believe is going to roll out. The state of the nation, people are angry for good reason. We've got a lot of issues that we deal with on a daily basis. But I also think it depends where you go. It depends where you're looking. And if for instance, if I have to give you a snapshot of what the country is looking like right now, and I tell you to go to Twitter or X, you're going to be very, very toxic. It's a very toxic environment. If I tell you to go to, I don't know, Facebook, and you sort of go into your community, it might be a little bit better. If I tell you to go to LinkedIn, it's going to give you a different picture of South Africa altogether because that's more business orientated. Instagram, we're going to look like we're all on holiday all the time. So it depends where you're looking and where those conversations are happening. I do believe that it's a tough and complex thing, the state of the nation and where we are. I just hope that South Africans are trying to find some sort of balance and not getting sucked into a negative narrative. Because here's the deal, right? It's election year, there's a lot of political parties that we can choose from, and there's a lot of good people that are trying to fight the fight. And I think if we can broaden our mind, I actually saw a tweet the other day, I can't remember who it was from, but it was a woman, she spoke to the fact that if we opened ourselves up and we just read up on not the party that we believe we have to vote for, wherever that belief system has come from. If you took a moment to look at 3 other parties that might be a little bit bigger and might be a little bit of interest, that maybe they're in the media, that they're doing certain things, and looked at what they stood for, would you change then your vote? And I think conversations like that is what South Africans should be having. So I don't know what the full state of the nation is. I kind of feel like we are angry a lot of the time, but I also think it's where you look.
Because it preempts what I'm going to say next. Is you've got this saying in your keynote, and I'd love for you to share it word for word so that I don't butcher it.
Yeah.
Effectively around when the helpers appear.
The helpers. So that goes back. It's my favorite quote, and it's attributed to Fred Rogers. And I'm going into keynote mode now. Keynote mode. Keynote mode. So it's attributed to Fred Rogers, and he was the original Good Things Guy, before Good Things Guy existed. He had a show in the 1970s called The Neighborhood, and it was all about kindness, community, love. It was all those good things that I kind of stand for today. And it said, in times of tragedy, we need to look for the helpers because they will always be there. But it's actually not him who said that. It was his mother who said that about 30 years before he became popular and famous.
Wow.
When Fred was little, he used to watch what was happening in the news. And he would say to his mom, I'm scared. Like, I'm so scared of what's happening in the world. And his mom would say to him, don't be. In times of tragedy, we need to look for the helpers because they will always be there. I love that quote for 2 reasons. The first, it shows us that the world has been a scary place for a really long time. We kind of think of it now. We're like, oh, this year is really bad. Look at the wars around the world. Look at my neighbors. Look at the communities. Look at social media. We think it's now. It's always been a scary place for a long time. But I love it more so, that quote, the reason, is because it's true. When it comes to news in South Africa, I remind my team on the darkest of days, when the news is at its worst, when we feel like it's all falling over, I remind them just to wait an hour, because that's the story we'll tell. That's the story we'll write.
And you nail it, right? Because I want to share a little story with you and get your commentary. I've been moving a lot between South Africa and Switzerland. These 2 countries are very far apart in how they operate. So Switzerland is an incredible place because everything works. In fact, it's bizarre how much everything works, with an interesting unintended consequence. I'm going on a limb when I say this, take it from whence it comes. There's very little gees. And I say that because there's nothing to fix. So you don't find communities gathering together to do a beach cleanup, or we've got this problem and we need to unite. And I never knew that this could be possible. I never knew that, because a side effect of everything working is that it effectively promotes less gees, because just think about it logically. So I'm not attacking them. It's just there's less to be, you kind of stay in your lane, things work, the bus always arrives on time, so forth. In South Africa, we have way more problems. And you have so many more people who stand up and say, I don't like what I see, I'm going to do something about it. And then not everybody has to be the person standing up, but they are often supported by so many other people. I think you have this interesting snapshot of how South Africa could have actually failed so terribly so long ago, and is held up. So if you look at it and go, everything's broken, you would have to say it's actually not true, although this exists here. You'd have to say on this end, the fact that we still have so much of society functioning despite the problems is because of the sheer number of NGOs, individuals, a Brent who says we need good things, like all these people coming together without realizing it. There's a compound interest effect on the country.
Absolutely. So I live in Fourways, and every other week our water is being switched off. There's infrastructure problems, and they're working on the pipes. Maybe that's a hyperbole to say every other week, but it is often. Like, I'll wake up in the morning and we'll get a message from the community WhatsApp group to go, oh, water's going out today, no water. You're going to have to, I don't know, wash in a bucket. I don't know what the story is. But our community is exactly that. So some of the neighbors have invested who can afford it into borehole water. And when the water goes out, our community WhatsApp group is not one of toxicity. It's one of helpfulness. So people will go, oh, do you need a shower? You can come to my house. I don't know those people. I have gone to someone's house to shower before. I had a keynote that I had to get to. We had no water. The neighbor on the group, I was like, hi guys, I've got a very big event. I'm very smelly. I've just finished gym. I have to go to this corporate event. Is the water back on? I think that was my question. I was asking from gym because we didn't have any water at the gym. And a neighbor who I knew, not well, but I knew, they said, pop on over. Come on over. I got borehole water. It's hot. We'll put a fresh towel out for you. Wow. And when I got there, him and his wife were sort of there, and I shout. That's community love.
Yes.
And that's the Ubuntu that South Africa can speak about. The other side of that, and you speak about resilience and the country, and I actually wrote about this the other day, right? So in 2019, there were a group of researchers who came up with a number that a South African had to earn in order to live with what they deemed a level of dignity. In our country, only 10% of our country live with dignity. That was 2019. I'm sure those stats are far worse now. That means that 90% of our population live without the right amount every month to have dignity. They go to the shops and they choose between soap and bread. Like, some people don't even get the opportunity to go to the shop. It's really quite terrible. But the 10% of our country that are able to earn money and able to make a life for themselves have almost cushioned themselves from the infrastructure problems, from the problems that have been accumulating over the last 30 years. And that 10% are giving back to charities, they're helping the NGOs. So it is the system that should it have not existed, should we not be as geesvol or as resilient, the country could have fallen over a long time ago. But that is also why I'm smiling and why I'm hopeful, because I don't believe we ever will. I don't believe South Africa is ever gonna fall off some cliff. I think with the human beings being the backbone, the people of South Africa being the backbone, we will rise and we will not only survive but thrive. Yeah. And I think there are also a lot of incredible human beings who are pushing to make sure that 10% becomes an 11% and a 12% and a 15% and so on.
I think you have absolutely nailed it. I think that's such a great framing to think about why South Africa hasn't failed despite the many predictions that we would. Because when you look at the statistics, you can go in a totally different rabbit hole. And then you look, and it's not to downplay the problems that the other 90% have. It's there. But somehow our system is still held up by the masses working with each other, the haves helping the have-nots, so to speak. And it does make you think, the more I travel, the more I see that I don't think South Africa falls down. Because there's this, the unintended consequence of all the hardship that we've gone through as a country, besides resilience, and we have some of the most incredible people in this country. And I see it, it's like and I literally just landed 2 days ago from overseas. So it's like South Africa, a week in Zurich, back to South Africa. So you keep getting these snapshots. Like you were just there, then you're just there. It's so, and now this is not about Zurich or Switzerland. It's just when it's so palpable how we wired.
Marky, 10 years ago, this thing happened to me and I went viral around the world. And I was on CNN and BBC and Sky News and all these things. It happened on the Friday. On the Monday, I was the front page of the Metro newspaper in the UK. That's like in every tube station, there was Brenty's face, right? So not that matters, but I'm giving you an understanding.
Yes.
So I had all this interest in why this average South African, I'm stock standard average. There's nothing special about me. I'm an average guy. How I managed to do something different and then change a game from people doing something really silly with drinking to millions of people being kind around the world. It was this really crazy
and
time.
Sharing it along.
But because of that, those days and those weeks that followed, I had all these charities, individuals, and businesses with incredible CSI projects that were getting hold of me to tell me about the good work that they were doing. So, like, a company would phone me and they'd be like, we want to get in on the RAC nominations, which it became NEC nominations to RAC nominations. We want to we want to take our CSI project of looking after 100 orphanages in the country, and we want you to come with to each orphanage so that we can hand over vouchers. I didn't manage to, because my time just wouldn't allow it, but it was stories like that. And for the first time in my entire existence in this country, 10 years ago, for the first time, I realized we weren't falling over because of those people.
Yes.
And I wanted other South Africans to feel exactly the same as me. That proud feeling I had, this hopefulness for South Africa. And that's the only reason I approached Gareth to get a show on Cliff Central. It's the only reason that Good Things Guy exists, because I started telling those stories. And I've continued to do it to this day.
So you have recently written a book. I'd love you to just give a little bit of synopsis about the book, because it's not just, hey, I've got a book, and it's not just about your story. There's a collective here about all these incredible good stories kind of being compacted into a space.
Yeah.
And that alone, if you were to read through that, right, I haven't read through the entire book, but I know you've collated a whole bunch of those stories, and I've read a lot of those stories. So tell us a little bit about the book, because I want to get into some details around some of those stories that have really stuck with you.
Okay, so this goes back to 2022. Mandy Wiener and I have become really good friends over the years. And we meet for coffee or lunch or whatever every month or so to chat about where we are in our life or whatever the deal is. And she kept pushing me, because you know Mandy's written numerous books,
yes,
bestsellers, award-winning. And she kept saying, your story is so interesting as to how you got to that point.
Yes.
So at 29 years old, what made you do what you did instead of drinking? Because you do drink. So
Yeah.
what was it? Was it your parents? Was it your teachers? Like, where did that come from? And she said it would be a great read for someone to learn from those lessons. You should write a book. You should write a book. Every time we met, this book story came up. So this has been going on for a number of years, but the end of, and I've got the framework of what it would be one day.
Yes.
That book is sitting in the bookshelf in my head. The end of last year, a very good friend of mine, her mother died, quite suddenly and quite tragically. And I didn't know how to put into words to help her. You don't. When a parent dies, it's not something that you can't go, hey, I feel you, because I've had the same happen to me. But I knew that I did feel the same, and I just didn't know how to say it to her. So I took one of the chapters in this book that I was supposed to write, and it's chapter 26, because my dad died when I was 26 years old, so that's sort of the chapters in my life. And I wrote a chapter called You Need to Celebrate Your Birthday Even If Your Dad Dies. And I know that sounds so somber. It's so like, but my dad died 4 days before my birthday, and it was tragic and it was awful. And I was forced by my friends to celebrate my birthday. And I did. And it was the craziest night. And it was really, if you read that, it's a wild story. And I wrote that chapter for her. And on my birthday the following year, which is 2023, I posted that chapter to Good Things Guy. And I shared it with all my readers, saying, if I had to write a full book, would you buy it? Like, I don't know if there's any interest. Yeah, Marky, it was crazy. That article got hundreds and thousands of shares. People were reading it. Everybody was interested. It was wild. Mandy phoned me. There were publishers that phoned me. Please stop putting your stuff online. You have to put this in a book. Like, you can't be sharing your book beforehand. And I met with publishers and we discussed what this book would be. And I spent 2023 with the idea of writing a book. I've had the great honor of interviewing many authors in South Africa, and I've always been interested in their process. I've asked, like, how did it happen? One of the authors went to Greece for 3 months and secluded herself from the world and wrote a book. Mike Sharman, he was writing his book when his kids went to bed at night. He was sitting for hours. It's just Mandy, when she writes a book, she dedicates a couple of hours, whatever it is. Like, everybody's got their own way of doing it. And I haven't figured out what that way is. I think my life, my diary, I'm blaming busyness here, so we'll go with that. But in 2023, I managed to put the framework together for like 3 other chapters of what it would be. So it's there, it's very unedited and it's terrible. And the end of the year was looming. It was coming closer and closer. And I was like, I wanted to write this book by the end of the year. That was my plan. But I wasn't getting to it. So in about September, October last year, my team were asking me about the book. And someone popped up and said, my new assistant, I think she said, what about taking the stories that you already have and putting that into a book? So I thought about it and I was like, publishing, it's expensive. Going with a publisher, they take a huge portion of your book. This is not really for profit. It's just an extension of what Good Things Guy is. Maybe we can self-publish. And maybe we do that by pre-selling the book. Maybe that's a way to do this. If the book is going to exist, I don't know. So I put out a post to our readers. I put it into a Google sort of doc that you could fill in, a Google form. And when that came back, I was overwhelmed. I thought to myself, if there's a 30% drop off here, we could still sell 1,000 books, like easily. So we started working on it. The team and I got together. We all decided what our top stories were. We then thought about what stories would fit into the book. Got to 100 eventually, these 100 stories. 80 of them are stories that we've written. 10 of them are opinion pieces, so they're sort of in the middle. Most of those opinion pieces written by me. And the end of the book is awards, so sort of heroes and awards that we looked at. An extension of the website with a few extras. We contacted 10 well-known people, celebrities, some business people in South Africa, and asked them for a quote. So they gave us a quote to go into the book. And then we started editing our articles, because an online article is very different to print. Yeah. So we had to edit it so it could fit in. We then got a legal flag where someone was like, you have to get people to sign off that they want to be in the book. So we had to get legal involved and 100 people plus to sign off that they were happy to be in the book. It was a process. And then the printing started. That was also just, I had no idea what I was doing. I was distraught when the books weren't ready for Christmas.
Yes.
But I mean, we only sort of settled on this in November. So I've got a better idea for the 2024 version. And we got it. And we got a few books in December, which we managed to get out into some Christmas stockings. Yeah. I sent out an email to everybody that had ordered. I said, it's not going to be ready. I'm so sorry. We'll either refund you, or if you wouldn't mind waiting till January. And there were, I think, 10 people that said, please, if there's any way, could we get them? Everybody else said, we'll wait till January. Wow. So we got those books out, the 10, and or whatever the number was. And then in January, it just flowed. And we're now, our second batch of books is being delivered in a week or two.
So if I can be so bold, I would love for you to take, this doesn't have to be your favorite story.
Yes.
But whet my appetite, so to speak, with a story that just kind of sticks out for you that you think would be a great way just to give the audience a little behind the scenes view that would make them want to go buy the book if they haven't already.
Look, first of all, I'm gonna do the thing that I shouldn't do. You don't need to buy the book. The stories are available online. So if you can't afford it, don't ever feel pressured. Sure. It is a beautiful thing to have. It's a really cool coffee table book. There's great stories of people that we've celebrated, like Hilton, who became the 5th South African in the world to get a Michelin star. Like, that's a great story to highlight. But then there's also the stories that maybe you saw trending online, but you didn't get the full story behind them. Like the JMPD officer who bought the little kid a new pair of school shoes. It was his first day of work. It was the first day of work for this JMPD officer. And his duty was to walk these kids across the road in the central CBD of Joburg. And most of the kids, their shoes are worn and torn and look terrible. But there was one kid in particular that it broke his heart. He was like, I remember being like that. I remember being that kid with no shoes on, or really broken shoes. And I remember thinking what a new pair of shoes would do to me and my confidence. And so he sort of judged the kid's size and went and bought him a new pair of school shoes. And the next day he handed a brand new pair of shoes to a kid that most probably doesn't eat every day. And I know the stories that we've written, countless stories, of how that little act of kindness can change a person's trajectory in life.
Yes.
That kid has got the confidence that they can do whatever they need to with those new pair of school shoes.
Yes.
And they will go on to do something, and 10 years from now, I hope to write their story.
See, what I think, and while I've spent a fair bit of time with you talking about the book, is for me what the book represents is a reminder to all South Africans that these people exist, and that when they did whatever they did, like buying the pair of school shoes, they had no clue what the knock-on effect. In that moment, it was just, I don't like this, and I remember what it was like to be this. They have no clue that someone's going to somehow pick up the story, and then it's going to go. And so they were doing it just from their heart. And it's so important that South Africans remember that two versions of South Africa exist at the same time.
Yes.
But the one version we know very well because it's fed to us every single day. And so we don't need reminding of that. We need that reminder. That is what the book has represented to me from the beginning. That's why I wanted to hear just even those, just that. Hey guys, hey South Africa, just a reminder, these people do exist. And they never once did it so that they could get into a book.
No, not at all.
It's by pure luck actually that they land up in these spaces.
That the story comes across our table. I'll tell you another one. So there was a lady that was driving in Pretoria, and she drove past a guy standing on the side of the road. Any intersection you go to, there are people standing. We've become so numb to the fact that there are people in need around us that we don't even see them anymore. Yeah. We don't see them. And she happened to really see this person in front of her. And it was an elderly gentleman, and he was holding up like a denim jacket. So she turned around. She came back, and she was like, I want to understand. He's not begging. He's holding it. Is he selling this? It looks quite cool. What is this? She sat down, she spoke to him, and his story was that he walks every day for hours to get into central Pretoria at a busy intersection to show off his son's skills as a fashion designer, because he's looking and hoping for someone to assist his son with college fees so that he can go to fashion school and so that he can do. What a great dad. Like, what a great story, right? So we told that story. It got put onto the website. It got put into a book. A woman from the UK, originally South African, flew to South Africa on holiday, went and found that man, because now they've become quite popular. Someone invested into the college, so he's at college, he's studying. She found that person, got their contact details, and she ordered whatever from them so that she could buy it when she was here in South Africa on holiday. That's the knock-on effect. That's the beauty of telling good news stories.
It's even a reminder to me that these stories matter. It's not about media, it's not about news, it's not about a business. It's that you just need to be reminded that both sides exist. I think that's what you've done so well, Brenty. I think that's why the platform is so important. I think it's also inspiring. It gives people permission to want to do the same for other people. I've often tussled with this in my head, like, if you do a good deed, should you tell other people about it? And I think it's all about why you do it. But I've tried to say what I've seen in my own life, that when I've tried to take something and say, I'm doing this and I'm putting this online, and I want you to know the reason is, I'm just wanting to remind you that you can do it too.
Yes,
that's it.
Absolutely.
Now, some people don't like that, and they'll make it look like you're posturing, and so be it. But what I've seen is genuinely other people, watching other people doing these things gives them permission to do the same. I think this is what must be happening in your life. I assume that you're not a happy bloke every day, all day. You have the same struggles, but this Good Things Guy platform is probably one of the greatest gifts that you've given to yourself.
Absolutely.
What a weird way to think about that was never why you started, but it's come back to be your greatest gift.
It is, and it is a gift, absolutely. It's a gift from whatever God you believe in that gave me this thing to give to other human beings so it can change their perspectives and their days. But it also has made, and I'm not happy every day. So T's and C's. I have bad days. Maybe I'm a little chemically imbalanced, that there is something in me that leans me to a more happier, positive side. But I also have really, really bad days. And it helps a lot to know that when I open up my inbox, whether it be on social media or on my email or my WhatsApps, there's a constant flow of people who are wanting to share their good news with me. And it's not always about them. Sometimes, and usually, the good news that's shared with us is of someone else. I saw this happening. I would love you to look into this to retell that story. And it does exactly what you said. It inspires other people to do the same. Quoting Nelson Mandela here, but as we let our own light shine, it gives other people the ability to do the same.
Yeah.
And that's what the platform does for South Africa.
Yeah, you see, I think why I was so keen to have you join is because what a lot of people see are these articles going out. You're quite prevalent on social media and you share a lot of point, but sometimes it's just so important for people to see a little bit of the behind the scenes views, a little bit of the backstory, a little bit of the thinking that goes into these things. I got two last things I want to talk to you about. Brent, internet trolls. And why I'm bringing it up is because we are in this, it's very hard to get away from social media as a whole. And I'd love to hear you must get a fair bit of backlash just because it's not even because you're doing anything bad. It's like, I sometimes wonder, like, why are they angry for that? What is it? But why I'm bringing it up is not to speak about the scandalous side of it. It's that so many people have to deal with it.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear how you think about people trolling you, the impact that it has on you, how you equip yourself mentally and emotionally to get through it. And my hope is that other people hearing this part, it would help them so that they don't get so downtrodden when it happens to them.
So the first thing is easy. Don't read the comments. Don't feed the trolls. Don't try avoid it. Very difficult because we humans. We want to know what's going on. We want to know. Oh, I've muted you, but I want to know what you're saying on my feed. Like I can see the mute. So sometimes we do look into that. What I will say is that when my mental state is great, when I'm happy, when my soul is fed, when I've gone to gym in the morning, when I've played with my pups, when I've spent time with my friends, when I've done all those things that fill my cup, there is nothing that anybody can say to me to break me. So if I read a comment or see a comment or if it's there in my peripheral, it does nothing for me.
Yes.
If my mental state is healthy and I'm in a good space, then it does nothing for me. But if I'm on a bad day, if you catch me on that bad day that I have, and I see something that's nasty and directed at me, it sticks and stones. It does break me. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible thing. And I try to remind myself that it says a lot more about that person than it does to me. So right now I'm not being trolled a lot. I think I'm in a good space. I don't know if I'm just, but I've got one, I want to say person because there is a real person behind whatever this account is. And they are obsessed with me and they reply and comment to majority of my tweets with the most hateful comments about me as a human being, personal stuff. I've muted them, and I sometimes call them out. I don't ever tag them. I don't, but yes. I speak about the fact, oh, the troll's back again. Still can't see what you're saying. But it does say more about that person, and I think we need to remember that.
Yes.
There is a human being behind that fake profile, a human being that chooses to follow me, a human being that chooses to spend their time and energy being nasty to me, and a human being that would never ever do that in real life.
Yes.
Like that says something about what that is. And I think if whoever's watching, if you can try and wrap your head around that it says nothing about you, what someone else is saying.
It has nothing to do with you.
Nothing to do with you. And nothing that you do or say will change that instance. I have had people, and this goes with the muting or handling with trolls, I've had some people ask me, why don't you just block them? The reality is there's this weird thing that if you get blocked, some people wear it like a badge of honor.
Yes.
And I've seen that. I got blocked by Donald Trump Jr. I don't know what I said, but I must have said something. And for the longest time, I was like, yes, Donald Trump Jr. blocked me. How cool. I must have been horrible. If maybe I was factual with what I said, but I did something to him to make him feel, I don't want that around me. So I don't wear blocks like a badge of honor anymore.
Yes.
When we know better, we do better.
Yeah.
So I understand that now. But should I block this troll, then I've given them their tick, and they can go, oh look, the good things guy blocked me. So I think know where it comes from, and then try to have your own sort of mechanism.
It's so prevalent right now on the internet. You don't have to be a good things guy, Brent Lindeque. You don't have to have 500,000 people who follow you type of thing. This ease with which people can attack another person from behind a screen and on a keyboard. And you can see it gets to some people. It really hurts them.
Absolutely.
And so we haven't been trained for it almost, have we?
And I've said this often, and I'll say it again. Being nasty to a stranger on the internet adds no value into the world.
Yes.
Not an ounce of value, really, in the reality, in the bigger scheme of things. I also want to add, every single human being is hanging on by a thin, thin thread. We don't speak about it, we don't say it, I see it all the time. The stories that we tell sometimes, they shake me to my core because humans are battling. It's tough. We are hanging on by a thin, thin thread. If you lead with kindness, if your knee-jerk reaction when you see something online is not to retort with something negative or personal or attack somebody, when you lead with kindness, you could literally save a life. And I think that's another way of looking at it from the other perspective.
I absolutely love that. Brenty, I could chat to you for hours, but I want to give you one final space. You sit in an interesting position. You got all this data. You actually look for the good news stories, you and your team, so you process them, so you're seeing both sides, but you're a normal human being that also goes through hard times. So if you were to give the country a message, right, like from, not just from Brent the person, but from Brent the data point, you're seeing all of this. I would love to give you that opportunity to leave people with a message, whatever that may be. That's your close-up camera. You've got this amazing vantage point. So what would you say to South Africa right now if we could have the whole nation watching you, right, for this however long this is? You have no time limit. What would you kind of remind them?
No pressure.
No pressure at all.
No pressure. I think what I'd remind you is that there is another narrative to our country, and we can get caught up in the bad news. We can get that spotlight effect that's making us think that that's all that matters and that's all that exists. And the reality is, it's not. There are good things happening all around us every single second. And when you start to look for those good things, you will start to see more of them. I promise you. I started this journey 10 years ago. And every single day, I'm now filled with hundreds of good news stories. Not because I'm now choosing to look for them, but because they're coming to me. And you have the ability to create that life for yourself as well. I also need to add, though, don't shy away from the bad news. You need to know what's going on around you. If we don't know what's happening around us, we don't know how to fix it. So maybe the ultimate key word here is balance. You need a balanced perspective of what's happening in our country.
You know, I've long said that Suits and Sneakers and the platform that we've managed to build has been a selfish endeavor because it gives me the opportunity to sit around people like you. And the only non-selfish part about it is that I share it with other people too. But I'm often reminded of the idea that you need to be reminded of things. So me sitting with you today is exactly that. I'm not in a bad state at the moment. In fact, I'm feeling really good. But it shows you that no matter where you're at in the world, no matter how you're feeling, you can always do with another good reminder. There is no shortage. I mean, there's no limit to how many good reminders you can have. And one of the lessons I've learned from you over the years, but from afar, is really to be very clear about where you place your attention during a day. I want to give that to you just on camera. It's so important. What I've learned from you is wherever your eyes go, wherever your ears hear, that's what's going to impact you. So choose that space wisely. And I think that beyond South Africa, people could do very well to remember that they're in control of that one thing at least.
Yeah.
That what they place their attention on becomes that reality. And I've watched it with you. I've watched in times where you block off or you're like, okay, not today work, not today world, I'm going to go have a few glasses of wine or tequila or whatever. It's not about drinking. I'm shutting down. I'm leaving my phone for a bit. That is such a vital lesson that I have watched from you over the years, and not as just your friend. I've watched you do it online. I want to give you kudos for that, but also for the job that you're doing. However it came about 10 years ago, however the stars aligned, that you needed to change your neck nomination into a rack nomination. It could have ended there, Brenty.
Yeah.
You could have had that 15 minutes of fame and then been like, how cool is that? And that's what your token would have been from there on. I did this thing for a bit. but it speaks to taking action. I've always thought of you as an action guy. Like you'll look at a situation and go, okay, but I've got this, now where to? And I don't know if that makes you the average guy, but there's a lesson in it that you're going to have these spots of good fortune come your way, either because of something you do directly or just because of pure luck, but you've got to do something with it. I think that's the other takeaway that I've got from you, and I want to share it with you too, is just watching you go like, I got this occasion. There's something that you've built on for it. That's why I admire what you've done with Keynotes, with the website, with the book. You've run with it. I hope more people, as they watch this, I hope more of you see that lesson and run with it too. It's such a powerful thing that like you're all going to have these moments that happen to you that can shoot you up. That's actually not the defining moment. It's what you do with that after. I've always admired, I sound like I'm your fanboy, but it's just because I see it in my peripheral. People don't realize that you wake up every day and you write those articles with your team.
Yeah.
Like you speak about it every so often. Like you get up, whether you're on holiday, you get up, whether it's Christmas, you get up. That's, I think, the part that people aren't seeing.
Yeah.
Not about the success of Good Things Guy, about anyone's success. Look at him, he's got that great personality and he can speak well. Like, yeah, I also get up when I'm hungover and write the article.
So I need to add, because I know that you're busy closing, but I need to add. So it's weird, right? For the first 7 years, I never took a day off. 7 years. It was maybe obsessive, but I knew what I wanted to do. So I started off writing one article every day for a week. And then I was like, no, I need more. I need to do 3 a day. And then that was a couple of weeks. And then I was like, no, 6 is the number for me. So I needed to do 6. And 6 articles a day take hours to sort of get to that point. So for 7 years, 7 whole years, I didn't take one day off. Not one day. And then the team started growing and they were like, Brenty, you can take Saturday off, or you can take like a Wednesday off, or whatever it is. And that's when it started to ease up a little bit. But I think it's that consistency.
Yes.
Consistency that starts to build something. 10 years later, and even now, I had someone the other day, I bumped into them and they said, I love your Friday newsletter. It's the best. And I don't know where we started going, but they were like, so what do you do for the rest of the week? And I was like, last year we published 4,000 articles. You're just seeing 10 of them on a Friday. And they were like, you have a what? You have a website? You write other articles? So some people don't know the backstory. Some people find us now and they don't know that it's taken 10 years to grow to this point. Learned lessons along the way. And I think that's a lesson as well for anybody that's watching. There are no such things as an overnight success. Not that I'm saying I'm successful. There's hard workers and there's people that have put all the blood, sweat and tears in, and you might only be seeing something that they started 10 years ago and thinking, wow, I would love to do the same. It's all hard work, dedication, consistency.
I want people to know that. By the way, we have no rules with closing and opening. It's a beauty. But I want people to know that because it is easy to look. Look, I think Good Things Guy is successful, and you can look at the metrics. The trajectory has been up to the right. So the data points to that. But then if we were to say, okay, if that's true, how did it get there? There's an interesting case study to be said for, well, this initial moment happened, then we built on this, and then we did this thing I did this thing for 7 years, and then I started to scale up, and now we're experiencing the compound interest effect of all that time. I hope people get that, right? I hope they understand that that's what's led to the endless amount of keynotes, the being picked up by News 24, and all the other things that we've spoken about through that episode. Because there's a great lesson in that. And it's not to like parade you around like a trophy. It's just like, it's so important for people to know. I know as a fellow entrepreneur, you just like, you hack at it. We did suits and sneakers and then it got going and then COVID. And then I'll never forget someone close to me who they meant it in good spirit. They said, maybe just leave the suits and sneakers thing. It's old. And I was like, I don't think you understand. I never ever started suits and sneakers. It was never money. I mean, most of our events are still free. So it was never that. I said, you understand that I'll be running suits and sneakers events till the day I die because it gives me a certain joy. And I know, as long as people keep coming to the events. And now we've seen this resurgence. So people who are coming to our events now that don't know the history, they're like, this is amazing. Where did you come from? And I was like, what you don't know is that this is
10 years.
10 years that I've been doing this. And now you only started. And it was another lesson to me that sometimes certain businesses, certain organizations, I heard this in a podcast, so I'm paraphrasing. It's like a 10-digit lock. You need all the digits to line up in a row and then it clicks. But sometimes it takes 9 years for those digits to click.
Yeah.
So you would give up in year 5 because you just haven't lined it, and you're like, it's just going nowhere, or it's not reaching the number I'm hitting. And then all those numbers click. The lock unlocks, and this whole new world opens up to you. But it took 10 years.
Yeah.
I hope more people see that, so that when they have that moment of inspiration and motivation, because they have their rack nomination type moment, it's like, okay, well, you're in for this. But don't be frightened by that. You've got to enjoy that journey.
Yeah.
You get it right, unbelievable things happen. I think that's what you've done.
Thank you, Brent.
So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Really, it's always such a soul-feeding exercise. I hope lots of people get to see this in one form or the other. And Brenty, only good things for you, boy.
Only good things!
Cheers.